Hi everyone, this is Chapter 6, Existential Therapy, Part 2 for Counseling 4500. Alright, now let's talk about the view of human nature when it comes to existential therapy. Reacts against the tendency to identify therapy with a set of techniques. So again, you can use many techniques. You can use techniques from the other ones if you're using or you're doing existential therapy for your paper. Based on the practice of understanding what it means to be human. So again, the ultimate thing is like this meaning of life, right? What does it mean to be a human being? To also show respect for the person, to explore new aspects of human behavior if you've been so passive this entire time, and then divergent methods of understanding people. So going to other ways of seeing the world or seeing other people than we normally or typically see it because of, let's say, our family influences and stuff like that. Existential tradition seeks a balance between recognizing the limits and tragic dimensions of human existence on one side and the possibility and opportunities of human life on the other side. So doesn't that sound kind of like when Adler was talking about superiority and inferiority on two sides of the same coin? Think about that, right? So on one side we have suffering and pain, but on the other side we have meaning of life and purpose, right? So that's what it's talking about here. Help people deal with the contemporary life. So it's like, what's going on in our lives today, which is isolation or being alone or not feeling like we're part of something. Alienation, maybe feeling like you are new to this world or no one around you understands what's going on or understands where you're coming from. And then meaninglessness, right? What is the purpose of all of this, of living? Irving Yalom says there's no relationship can eliminate existential isolation, but aloneness can be shared in such a way that love compensates for its pain. Okay, so that saying is that we all really do feel alone, but that's okay because we can also live a life where the love will help us deal with that loneliness that we have. Okay, humans are always in a state of transition, emerging, evolving, and becoming in response to the tensions, contradictions, and conflicts in our lives. So we are constantly changing and evolving as we get new information around us, right? And so hopefully some of that stuff will make us feel a little bit better, help us cope with life. Themes do not vary as we go through our lives. So these are things that we keep on asking ourselves. Who am I? What can I know? What ought I know? What can I hope for? And where am I going? Right? So these are things that you'll probably have asked yourself when you were, let's say, in high school, maybe when you're in elementary school. Now that you're in college, let's say once you graduate and you go start working, what are you going to do? Who are you, right? And then when you have relationships, when you have children, let's say that you're very successful now and you're maybe a little bored or have a little free time to think about what's going on with life. You're like, well, who am I now? So these are things that constantly happen and we constantly reevaluate ourselves and then we make decisions based on how we're feeling at that time. Basic dimensions, the capacity for self-awareness. So again, being able to understand that, who you are as a person, freedom and responsibility, creating one's identity and establishing meaningful relationships with other people. So finding out who you are and then meeting people who will hopefully enrich your life as well. The search for meaning, purpose, values, and goals. Anxiety is a condition of living. An awareness of death and non-being is another part of that, right? So what it's asking to do, and I feel like maybe 2024, we're feeling a lot of anxiety. I hear the word anxiety a lot in social media. I hear people say, you're making me feel very anxious right now, or you're making me feel very uncomfortable right now. I hear that quite a bit lately. So what existential therapy or psychology or counseling is asking is, well, how do you deal with it? Because we all feel this, we all pretty much feel this anxiety. So how you cope with this is really the key thing because it exists for pretty much everyone. All right, now we're going to go into the propositions. So in existential therapy, there are certain things that the process that we're going through to kind of understand the meaning of life. So let's just go through this right now. The capacity for self-awareness, freedom, choice, and responsibility are the foundation of self-awareness. So you got to understand, that you can do a lot of things. You can make a lot of choices. But you also need to now make and take responsibility for all this and be held accountable for them. Greater our awareness, the greater our possibility for our freedom. We are both free to express, but we're also limited by the environment as well. So let's say, for example, someone goes, "Oh, well, I don't want to be poor, so I'm just going to be rich." That's not necessarily how the world works, unfortunately, right? Not in America, not in this capitalistic society that we live in. So there are also limits. You can't also just say, "I don't want to be poor," and then move out of a very poor neighborhood. It's not that easy, right? But there are steps to get to it. But it's not like you just make a decision and that's it. There are certain things that society, the way that the world exists, that you can't just make all these kind of extravagant desires or demands and it will happen. We increase our capacity to live fully as we expand our awareness. Number one, we are finite, which means that we all die, and do not have unlimited time to do what we want in life. Two, we have the potential to take actions or not to act. Inaction is still a decision. So again, if you choose not to do something, that's still a choice that you did, right? That you made. So you need to take responsibility for that. But then also know, if you're not happy with what's going on, you can actually choose not to do that and change it and do something else. Three, we choose our actions, therefore we create our destiny. So that means that we ourselves should take responsibility of our own lives. Because when we choose those things, we're creating who we are, right? Four, meaning is the product of discovery, how we are thrown in the world, and then how we live creatively. So again, we're all on this planet Earth, right? So how do we live? Five, as we increase our awareness of choices, we increase our responsibilities of consequences. So as we learn to choose things, we will start to have to accept what happens after that, right? If you make a bad decision, right? Let's say you yell at your best friend, right? And then you and your best friend don't talk for a year. You did that. So take responsibility, and if you want to, let's say, try to resolve it, then you have to then take your actions and then go talk to that person. Will they forgive you? Maybe, maybe not. We don't know, because they also have the choice to do either one if they want to, right? Six, we are subjects to loneliness, meaninglessness, emptiness, guilt, and isolation. So we feel all these things, right? We are feeling all these things quite a bit throughout our lives. And it's okay, because we're all feeling it. You're not alone. Number seven, we are basically alone, yet we have an opportunity to relate to other beings. So what that is saying is that we're all alone, or we feel all alone, but because we all feel alone, we're not alone, because we're all sharing those experiences, even though we're living our own lives. So it sounds kind of funny, right? But at the same time, it makes a lot of sense too. All right, awareness during counseling. Well, number one, trading in security of dependency for anxieties and choosing for ourselves. So when you are behaving the way that you normally behave and you're unhappy, but you know that this is what's happening. So when you go to therapy and then you start to change, you're going to cause anxiety because you don't know what's going to happen when you change, right? So that's what number one is talking about. Number two, identity is anchored in someone else's definition of them. They are seeking approval and confirmation of their being in others instead of looking to themselves for affirmation. So what that is saying is sometimes we live other people's dreams, maybe our parents' dreams, right? But what happens is you have your own choices. So maybe that's why you're not happy, because you are seeking other people's approvals instead of seeking your own approval. Three, learn that keeping themselves prisoners of past decisions, they can make new decisions. So people sometimes we stay the same way because that's all we know, or that's how we know how we're going to feel. But you know that you can actually change if you want to. Four, cannot change the past events, but can change the way that we view and react to it. Yeah. So let's say that you had a really terrible, tough childhood. We acknowledge it, but then we don't have to continue it, right? We can become happy people. We try to be happy people anyways. Five, the future does not have to be like the past. Learn from the past and reshape their future. Six, too preoccupied with suffering, death, and dying that they are not appreciating living. So now that you know that we're all going to die, don't think about it. Have a healthy relationship. Like, well, we're all going to die, right? But don't start to dread it. You're like, oh no, we're going to die. What's the purpose of living anyways? I'm just going to stay at home because I don't want to. We're all going to die anyways. So why am I even try? No, hopefully you are going to try and live a life and it's meaningful. Okay. 7, accept their limitations yet still feel worthwhile. Do not need to be perfect to feel worthy. 8, failing to live in the present because of the past planning for the future, or trying to do too many things at once. So some of y'all are multitasking and doing a lot, right? And whenever I see that, I always go, are you enjoying life? Are you taking care of yourself though? So that's really important. And then some people are just planning for the future all the time, and they're not appreciating what's going on right now. And then there are people who live in the past because of the traumas or whatever, and so they're not living for the now as well, and that becomes problematic as well. Proposition number 2, freedom and responsibility. People are free to choose among alternatives and therefore play a large role in shaping their own destiny. So again, that's about choice, right? There are 3 values that we're talking about. The first one is the freedom to become within the context of natural and self-imposed limitations. So there are things that are going to happen in your life. Either it just comes naturally or you do it to yourself, right? And that we need to know that we can make choices when that happens. 2, the capacity to reflect on the meaning of our choices. So I hope that you also take time to think about what's going on, why you do the things that you do. 3, the capacity to act on the choices that we make. So again, you are aware that you can do these things and then you do it, right? So you take responsibility, your freedom, and your responsibility to choose to do those things. Although we are all longing for freedom, we often try to escape from our freedom by defining ourselves as fixed or static entities. So sometimes we just say, well, that's just because that's who I am, and that's it, right? So inauthenticity is, since that's the way that I'm made, I couldn't help what I did, right? So you're blaming kind of your past, who you are, and then you cannot change because that's it. You're static. You're fixed, right? Because of that. But no, you're not. You are actually moving, fluid things, fluid humans. Naturally, I'm this way because I grew up in a dysfunctional family. So because you grew up in a dysfunctional family, you have to be dysfunctional for the rest of your life? No, you don't have to be. All right. Now let's talk about freedom. We are responsible for our lives, for our actions, and for our failures to take action. We're condemned to this freedom, which means that it's just always there. Existential guilt is being aware of having invaded a commitment. So you're basically realizing that you've been avoiding living life, or having chosen not to choose, right? So again, existential guilt is when you realize, oh, what am I doing? Authenticity, we are living by being true to our own evaluation of what is valuable existence for ourselves. So we're actually living the lives that we think are important or purposeful. It is a courage to be who we are. We get upset when we don't have choices, but we get anxious when we do. So, you get upset when you're like, well, why can't I choose all these different things? But then when we say you can choose whatever you want, people are like, what? Whatever? What does that mean? I don't know. What should I choose? And then you get more anxiety or more, confusion and all that other stuff. So it's kind of funny that either way, some people are not happy. 2 central areas of the therapy is, number 1, let the client know that they have allowed others to make decisions for them. So again, sometimes other people influence us and then we just allow it to happen. And then 2, encouraging them to take steps towards choosing for themselves. So again, you are a human being, your own self. So let's start making your own decisions instead. Proposition number 3 is striving for identity and relationships to others. People are concerned about preserving their uniqueness, yet they have a desire to relate to others and to nature. So again, we all want to be ourselves, but we also want to connect with other people as well. The trouble is that many people seek help from important people and become something others expect us to be. So have you ever had a role model, right? You're like, wow, I really admire you. I want to be just like you. But because of that, you're not being yourself then, right? Even though you mean well, right? So that's something that we need to realize, is that we need to find out who we are. So maybe for a while you want to do things that your mentors do. That's great. But we still hope that you still find out who you are, who makes you unique and special. We become strangers to ourselves if we don't. Okay. The courage to be awareness of our finite nature, again, death, right, gives us an appreciation of ultimate concerns. So we need to realize that we have death to be able to appreciate what's going on. Courage entails the will to move forward in spite of anxiety-producing situations such as death. So courage, again, for fear, remember when we talk about being able to act in times of fear or in death, will make our lives much more rich and meaningful. Here's a quote. My fear is that I'll discover I'm a nobody, that there really is nothing to me. I'll find out that I'm an empty shell. hollow inside, and nothing will exist if I shed my mask. And that's a feeling I think all of us have felt, or if not, some of you will feel it in the future. This is something that, everyone goes through, right? But hopefully we use it as a moment to realize and then now start to reevaluate our lives so that we can choose something that's beneficial to us and makes us unique and makes us appreciate our life and find purpose. All right, courage to confront these fears allows a client to tolerate the uncertainties of life. Clients can also create a self that has meaning and substance that they can have chosen. The experience of loneliness or aloneness is we cannot depend on anyone else for our own confirmation. So, as you need to depend on yourself, you need to realize and work on yourself. We alone must give sense to meaning of life. Only you can tell, that you have a purposeful life or a meaningful life, right? Like, think about when you're at your deathbed, you think about everything. Are you going to be concerned about how you lived life for other people, or are you going to be more concerned about who you live your life for, which is yourself? Wait, we alone must decide how we will live. If we are unable to tolerate ourselves when we are alone, how can we expect anyone else to be enriched by our company? So again, if there's a lot of people around us that become part of our lives, you want people who know who they are, comfortable who they are, love themselves, right? And so we want you to do the same thing so that when you interact with other people of the same stature of values, that you both benefit from each other. All right, the experience of relatedness. Humans depend on other relationships with others. We are communal animals, right? So that means that we need to talk to other people. We're pack animals, basically. So in that sense, we need to make sure that we can depend on each other. We want to feel significant in other people's lives. Know the difference between a neurotically dependent attachment and a life-affirming relationship. So one of them is like a codependent, right? Like, I cannot find value in myself unless you tell me that I have value. We want to avoid that. We want you to just have value in yourself, love yourself. And then when you talk to other people who love themselves, you love each other, lift each other up. The therapist will also examine the relationships in the counseling when a client avoids intimate contact, right? Like, why are they not having intimate relationships with other people? And intimate doesn't mean sexual. It means like close, relationships, feeling vulnerable and stuff like that. Prevent themselves from having equal relationships. So why are they not seeing other people equally? Remember, I, thou relationships? You should have I, thou relationships with the people that you find important in your lives. And then, of course, how do people have mature human relationships? All right, struggling with our identity. Some of us become trapped in doing mode to avoid experiencing of being. So some of us are really afraid of existing, of finding meaning in our lives. So instead, we just kind of say, oh yeah, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. You just do those things, but you don't necessarily connect with anyone and you don't appreciate yourselves. And that is really important that you do appreciate yourself. People get caught up in expectations as a child and stay committed to that image. So as a child, or maybe your family or you thought that this is the way that you're supposed to be, right? And guess what? You're not that person that you were. So are you okay with that? Can you accept that you might not have been able to achieve those things, but you can still be happy? Or are you going to stick to yourselves and say, well, since I didn't have that, I'm a failure for the rest of my life and that's it, right? There's no meaning or purpose in life. All right, proposition number 4, the search for meaning. As humans, we look for significance and purpose in life. Do you like the direction of your life? Are you pleased with what you are now and what you are becoming? If you're confused about who you are and what you want for yourself, what are you doing to get that clarity? Ooh, that's a deep one, right? So if you're saying that you don't know, what are you doing? You guys are all students right now and probably going to become a helping professional. So that might offer you some clarity in your purpose in life, right? The problem of discarding old values. Some clients will try to discard traditional values without creating new ones. You should not. You should be aware what are your choices before you throw away all the stuff that you have been depending on, right? Because you might feel lost and really scared. All right, the therapeutic process is to help them create a value system based on a way of living that is consistent with their way of being. So you want to make sure that your value system is still valued, is legitimate, is authentic, and valid, right? And then you're going to live your life according to your own values, your set of values that you believe in. All right, meaninglessness. If your client feels life is meaningless, it may be hard to live. That makes sense. So you want to ask these questions. Is there any point to what I do now, since I will eventually die? Will what I do be forgotten when I am gone? Given the fact of mortality, why should I busy myself with anything? Right? So we want to make sure that you do find some meaning, your clients find meaning in your lives, in each of our lives, right? But these are things that we kind of, ask ourselves in times of, of sadness, let's say, or aloneness, right? And it's okay. We all ask these questions. We're hoping that you find clarity and find meaning so that you can live a fulfilling life before you die. All right, existential vacuum, meaningless in life can lead to emptiness and hollowness. So we don't want you to feel so isolated from the rest of the world that you feel hollow and empty inside for the rest of your life. We don't want you to be in that existential vacuum. We want you to be able to find the purpose in life. All right, creating new meaning. Logotherapy, Viktor Frankl, right, is designed to help clients find meaning in life. Therapists does not tell clients what their meaning in life should be, but to point out that they can create meaning even in suffering. So even though they're having a rough time right now, what do they learn from this? What can we do to change it and grow from here? People who confront pain, guilt, despair, and death can deal with the despair and triumph, right? Find meaning in a byproduct of engagement, creating, loving, working, and building. So here we're saying is, connect with other people, start to build, start to create, start to do those things, because hopefully that will help us figure out who we are as a person. Meaning is created out of a person's engagement with what is valued, which makes life worthwhile. So we hope that you are hanging out with people that you love and you value. Okay? Meaning in life is an ongoing process we struggle with throughout our lives. Again, we will try to find meaning throughout our lives. We will re-question, or we will question ourselves throughout our lives. When I was an undergrad, I started working and I was like, what am I going to do now after 10 years of doing that? Then I decided to go to grad school. Once I did grad school, what am I going to do now? What's the purpose of life? And then I went to doctoral school, right? So we all are going to question ourselves. It's just part of who we are as a life. When we get a new job, we're like, is this the job for us, or is it not, right? And sometimes it's not the job for us, and then we move on after a while. Once we are finding stability and stuff like that, we can then maybe move on to other things. All right, what provides meaning one day may not provide meaning the next day. This is what we just talked about. And what has been meaningful to a person throughout their life may be meaningless when a person is on his or her deathbed. We hear about this all the time when it comes to money, right? You make all this money, but you don't spend it, and then you die with all that money just in your bank account. What happened there? Did you enjoy any of that hard work that you made, or you did? We hope that you do enjoy some of it. Obviously, it's smart to always save money just for a rainy day, but there are people who live very sad, miserly, cheap lives when they're so rich with all these opportunities, right? So yeah. All right, proposition number 5 is anxiety as a condition of living. So existential anxiety, unavoidable result of being confronted with the givens of existence. Which means death, freedom, choice, isolation, and meaninglessness. We've heard all this before, right? So the fact is that we all have this, so it's unavoidable. We have to deal with them. We experience anxiety as we're aware of freedom. Anxiety may be a signal that we're ready for personal change. So think about that. Anxiety is kind of like that little fire underneath your butt that maybe lights it up and then makes you move, right? Kind of appreciate the fact that anxiety is there. There's normal anxiety, an appropriate response to an event being faced, right? So let's say that you're nervous because you are about to do a presentation in class and you don't want to mess up. Yeah, that makes sense, right? Or let's say that you see a bear coming at you, you freak out. That is normal. Like, our anxiety there is to run or whatever you're supposed to do with the bear, right? Those are normal anxiety that you should, right? However, let's say that you had to choose between drinking Coca-Cola or Pepsi, and then you freak out, you have a mental meltdown and all that stuff. That is neurotic anxiety, or just like a little bit too much, right? Like you'll be fine. But think about all the people who freak out about so many things in life, and you're like, you'll be fine, right? But some of us do have that neurotic anxiety about concrete things that is out of proportion to the situation. Neurotic anxiety is typically out of awareness and tends to immobilize a person. So immobilize is just a fancy way of saying is, you feel like you're stuck, you're frozen there, and you don't need to be, right? But if it's a logical thing, like I said before, like a bear or something like that, yeah, you are supposed to freak out. But if it's like the choice between, having vanilla ice cream or chocolate ice cream, you melt down, then that can become a worrisome issue. All right, we do not want to eliminate all anxiety. Again, that's true. If you have a bear running at you, you should not feel scared. You should feel scared, right? So you don't want to eliminate all anxiety. Anxiety is there to protect us, right? But we don't want to overuse it for situations that don't need it. Those who lose their anxiety quickly in therapy may be creating security in the unknown and deceiving ourselves. So if you lose it all, you're like, oh yeah, none of this is a big issue. That becomes another thing as well, because you're going way too much on the other side. All right, proposition number 6 is awareness of death and non-being. Death is not viewed negatively, but holds that awareness of death as a basic human condition. That means that everyone has it to go through it, and gives significance to living. So because we all die, we all should be living, before we die. Death is a threat. Death provides the motivation for us to appreciate the present moment. If we know that we do not have an eternity to complete our projects, our present is important. Those who fear death also fear life, right? So again, we all are going to die. So what are you going to do before you die? Okay. Some of you are maybe, let's say if we all live to 100, you guys are all maybe in your 20s or 30s. That means that you still have, a good amount of time, like 80 years or, 70 years to live, which is fantastic. But, in a blink of an eye, you're going to go, oh no, I only have 40 years left. Oh no, I only have 30. Oh no, I only have 10 years to live, right? So we want to make sure that you think about the fact that you will die and that you make choices that make you not regret living your life. All right, this is the end of part 2.